Solipsism, stated in simple terms, is patterns cannot repeat. Hey, my name is Zachary. Today I want to talk about solipsism and the limits of our knowledge, and we're going to see how that relates to beauty. I think there are some very common errors relating to solipsism that slow down the progress of art in the ways that we appreciate art, most importantly. So the version of solipsism that we're most generally familiar with is that a person cannot have knowledge of the external world, right? Or nothing can be known outside of somebody's perspective. Generally, this kind of shows up as other people don't exist, or the outside world itself doesn't exist, something like that. Nothing exterior can be known to exist. So we see knowledge, we understand knowledge as a physical structure that is repeated in the mind. So for example, I have knowledge. If I want to have knowledge of something, I need to have the something that I have knowledge of be repeated in my mind, right? Like right now I'm drinking some tea, or right now I'm preparing myself some tea. I can smell it. It's copying, the scent is being replicated into my mind, and the scent is not being replicated in your mind. So you don't know what it smells like. I do know what it smells like. So to know anything, it requires a structure of the thing that you want to know to be repeated in the mind, at least some aspect of that structure. So in the perspective of the solipsist, there are no structures or patterns outside of the mind that can be repeated in the mind. Or the opposite could also be said, there are no patterns inside the mind that could be repeated outside of the mind, or no patterns inside of the mind that could be made to match the patterns outside, or nothing outside can be made to match the patterns inside. Are you following what I'm saying here? There's a barrier to what patterns, there's a barrier to where patterns can replicate. There's a barrier to where patterns can be copied. So there are actually lots of variations of solipsism. There's an infinite number of variations, but the most extreme version of it would have a very strict barrier. And it just means that knowledge never has any reach, or patterns never have any reach, meaning that a pattern can never persist or repeat. That's the most extreme version. To give a taste of the infinity of alternative versions of solipsism, I'll just go through a couple. No patterns can repeat outside of my perspective. So again, that's something outside of my perspective cannot be known to me. It cannot repeat into my mind, and I cannot know it. Another alternative would be more about a culture. So maybe I have a family, and I think that there are no patterns outside of the family that can come into the family. So essentially, there's nothing that anybody can teach me about how to relate with my family. Or maybe there's cultural knowledge. So within a particular culture, there's knowledge within this culture that cannot go outside, and nobody outside of my culture can know the knowledge that's in my culture. You see what I mean? There's barriers, and there are different places where you can place that. There are different places to set that barrier, but that's the barrier, and it's the same in all of these cases. This is all solipsism. You might think that there's a barrier to humanity. Humans can only know things on Earth, or humans can only know things about human culture, and they can't know anything about alien culture or spirits or gods or something like that. It may even go the opposite way, that gods can't interact with humanity. It's the same type of solipsism. Or spirits or something can't know things without having humans know them first and teach them. Things like that. All right, I'm getting a little loose here, but you get the picture, I hope. These are all variants of the same thing. And so to me, the thing that I'm interested in is beauty, aesthetics, art. The thing I'm interested in is beauty. And what I want to understand is, are there limits to what a person can appreciate as beautiful? Or are there limits to what a person can create as beautiful? So for example, could a person, a human being, create something that an alien would appreciate as beautiful? Or is there a limit to the patterns that can be replicated across? Is there a barrier which that we can make patterns that the aliens cannot replicate into their minds? Or is there that same barrier where an alien or God or something like that can create some type of pattern that cannot be replicated into the mind of a human that could be appreciated as a work of art that can be known to be beautiful? Is there a barrier from an individual person? Is there a barrier for a culture? Is there a barrier for the species? And so on. Again, I think there are infinite different variations, different possible variations of where a barrier could be for where the beauty that is created outside can never be appreciated inside, or the beauty that's created inside can never be appreciated outside. And I think it's fundamentally wrong. Clearly, when I simplify it so much that it's just a pattern that's repeating, of course, any pattern in the world could be repeated into the mind of a person, or any pattern that we make as a person could be repeated in the mind of an alien. I guess I don't know anything about alien minds, but at least they have the ability to repeat patterns. So that means that it is possible to create beauty that can be repeated into the minds of all people and into the minds of cultures outside of humanity. And essentially, there are no limits to the reach of beauty. All right, those are just some of my unstructured thoughts. Okay. Those are some of my partially structured thoughts. I was reading something, but I wasn't really reading it word for word. Um, I bet somebody could understand it. It's kind of a part of the point of the thing that I'm talking about, right? I have a pattern in my mind, and that pattern is replicable by somebody else. So that pattern may be showing up in your mind also. And you may understand exactly what I said. So if you do, go into the comments, say that you understand it. Or if you don't understand it, go to the comments and tell me how wrong I am, or ask for clarification. I don't know. Maybe you can add some nuance too. That'd be cool. I'm just having fun thinking about the limits of what we can appreciate. And I want to learn how to appreciate more. And if there are no limits to what we can appreciate, good Lord, I've got a lot of work to do.